Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to Sōma Maṇdala. This is a 1 hour session, so it's very short and crisp. And we'll be using the first half an hour to set the context for what the space is and introduce the topic of boundaries and how somatic experiencing can help in our well being. And then we are also using the space to engage with those of you who have joined to really listen to and understand what are the challenges and observations you have around boundary setting in your own life and others. About this particular initiative, Sōma Maṇdala, Sōma means relating to somatics, to the body, and Mandala is a term from Indian tradition of a certain configuration. That's the loosely the closest translation. A constellation or a configuration that is meaningful and which has a certain pattern. So what we look forward to in this series of webinars and workshops is to bring together related concepts, ideas, and practices around working with an embodied awareness and practice on important topics that impact our well-being. So somatic experiencing will be one core part of that process. And hopefully we'll also bring in other allied modalities, wisdom practices from yoga and other things as we go along. So every month we have a theme, and I'm quite lucky to work with many of my friends who are part of this journey in somatics to do this initiative. And for this month and for this webinar and workshop, I have with me Federica. She's a somatic coach and a surfer who divides her time between Italy and many places in Europe and then Sri Lanka. And there's a lot more to the work that she does. And when we discussed about what topic to choose to work together, boundaries came up as a very mutually appealing topic relevant for our current life context as well as what we could work with for others. So that's how this particular theme emerged. And so without further delay, I would hand over to Federica to take us through a centering practice. And then we'll get into an introduction about this topic and what it means for our well-being. So over to you, Fede.
Thank you so much, Hari. Thank you for introducing myself. Thank you also for saying that I'm a surfer, because that's a really important part. It's just to bring up also a little bit of lightness, because sometimes healing can be seen too much in a serious way. So let's try also to all relax about it and just go with the flow of this first encounter that we have. So the centering that we are going to do, a little grounding that we are going to do, is going to be just a little hint of what is also somatic experiencing, which you will see it's nothing crazy. It's just about noticing. So I just invite you all to feel your feet on the ground. And just notice what's on the floor right now. Is it cold? Is it warm? Are your feet dry? Or maybe sweaty? And let's just remind to ourselves that we have a ground here, that we have a floor. Then we notice our breathing without changing it, just noticing. Is it shallow? Is it fast? Or maybe it's just really open. Is it in the chest? Or maybe in the belly? We are here just to notice and not judging. And now we give space to our vestibular system and we try to orient a little bit in the room where we are right now. And we just look on the left. And we see where our senses take attention to, where our nervous system want to focus on. Could be a color, it could be a shape, it could be a light. Just look around on the left part. Maybe it's a sound that take our attention. And then we do the same on the right side. Always noticing. Even if it sounds so simple, but this is what our nervous system needs. It needs safety. It needs to know that it's safe where it is. And after I looked around and I noticed my breath, what am I sensing in my body? I started that I was a bit agitated. True, my heart was racing a little bit. And now my heart slowed down. My breath is less shallow. I can take deeper breath. Try to notice with yourself also. That's the power of slowing down, because this is just what the nervous system needs, slowing down. So the topic today is boundaries. And we're gonna just explore a little bit what are boundaries, why is it important to have a sense of boundaries, and there's also a little connection with anger. So boundaries are important limits we put for ourselves, and they connect us with our intuition. They make us understand what we like, what we dislike, and what threatens us. Try to imagine boundaries as invisible lines. They can be communicated through words, through body language, or through behavior. But here is the thing. It's not easy to know when or how to set a boundary. And why? Because trauma disrupts our sense of self. So unfortunately, we fall into the trap of people pleasing. One of my favorite quotes of Gabor Mate says, if we constantly say yes, we will be liked, but we will never be loved. I said it again. If we constantly say yes, we will be liked, but we will never be loved. I'm curious to know from all of you, if you want to share in the chat, if you sit with this sentence and you just take a second, what are the sensations coming up in your body? What are the emotions coming up in your body? So if someone feels like, you can share it in the chat. Or maybe Hari want to share, what did it happen to you when you heard this sentence?
Sure, I can start. I think first, when I heard the sentence, I had a flash of memories of being a people pleaser
Mm-hmm.
of so many instances, because that like word triggered this pattern early on of wanting to be in the good books
Yes.
of people around, of authority figures. And then when you said never be loved, it also brought out a lot of memories of relational spaces where that liking ended up leaving a sense of taken for granted or
Mm-hmm.
not respected and hurts.
Yeah.
So I think that felt a little heavy, like a sharp pain in the chest area, some heaviness.
Well,
Yeah.
this is really well described. Like, this is the same I felt the first time I heard it. So thank you for sharing, Ari. That was really powerful. And Padmaja says a sense of realization. Yeah, which I think is like what also Ari was sharing, like a sense of realization. There is something akanksha, I don't know how to pronounce the name. Okay, good. Okay. There is something rising between my chest and throat when I hear this. This part about being liked, I understand. It's been an ongoing unlearning journey. I'm lost on the latter part of the line through. Why does it mean one won't be loved? We will go through this a bit deeper then, but thank you so much for sharing. And as you see, the part of the body is always there. As you said, my chest and throat, when I hear this, like that was like something rising there. Same for you, Hari. You said like it was like a sort of like a, I'm saying like a knife, but like a sharp things like feeling in the chest. So we all in a way resonate with this like sentence, okay? So sometimes we don't even realize we need a boundary because we have been trained by trauma for sure, but also by society to not notice when something is uncomfortable. We live in a world, especially for women, where it's really hard to say no. And we are conditioned to play the good girl role, to stay pleasant, agreeable, and soft. And this isn't just about our childhood, it's also systemic. So society teaches men to be the providers, the assertive ones, and maybe the one who doesn't have to feel emotions such as like sadness, while women are expected to be the receivers, so the welcoming, nurturing, warm that accept everything without complaining. So yeah, setting boundaries is hard. Because the truth is that our sense of boundaries doesn't start in our mind, but it starts in the body. Have you ever experienced, for example, that uncomfortable feeling of when you say yes, but it was a no? And after that, there was something that was not feeling right in your body. Maybe you had migraine, maybe you have tension in your shoulder, or maybe you have some fatigue or a sudden drop of energy. Well, that was your body talking to you. That was your nervous system saying, please, next time, can you listen to me? That was your authentic self asking to be seen. Because if we're able to say no, we are showing who we are, who we truly are. And remember, the body always knows first. Basically, when we say yes while our body is screaming no, the body starts to speak louder through symptoms like fatigue, pain, chronic illnesses, burnout, or anxiety. And remember that this is not your fault. It's what happens when we've been taught by trauma, family system, or by society that it's safe to be liked than to be real. But as children, or because of society, we didn't have a lot of choices. Now as adults, we have one big choice, which is the one to decide to heal and to take responsibility of ourselves. But now I want to go a little bit more into the connection between boundaries and anger. So basically, if we don't feel anger, it's going to be really hard to know where our boundaries are. Because anger is my favorite emotion, which can look like really weird, but I rediscovered the power of anger. Because anger is demonized, is seen as something that we don't have to feel. But this is the misconception about anger. We think that anger is the reaction to anger. So screaming, yelling, or being aggressive. This is reaction. Anger itself is just an emotion such as sadness or joy. So anger is powerful and is an intelligent emotion. It helps us understand who disrespect us, who manipulate us, and when we feel threatened. So often a clear no became much more obvious when we feel the flash of anger. This disconnection doesn't just stay emotional, but it becomes also physical. Many people who struggle to set boundaries or who constantly suppress their anger end up developing chronic stress. And chronic stress leads into tension in the body, migraines, autoimmune system, or gut issues. Because as a really important book of Bessel van der Kolk says, the body keeps the score. So I will read just a little studies that have been made, and it's not because I want to scare you, it's just because it's important to know. Nearly 80% of autoimmune disease cases occur in women. And this is due to suppressing emotion like anger, because it's a risk factor for depression, IBS, chronic fatigue, migraines, and heart disease. So other autoimmune risk for women and men that suppress their emotion, above all anger, and then leads them into not being able to set boundaries, to put boundaries, could be dysregulated immune function and chronic inflammation, contributing to conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's, and fibromyalgia. So just to say how much is important in our life to know how to set boundaries and to know how to feel anger and any other emotion. But let's arrive to the beautiful part, which is that there's a solution. And I'm not saying that somatic experiencing is the only solution, but right now we are here, and me and Hari, we are like two practitioners of somatic experiencing, and I know on my skin that somatic experiencing can help really well. Somatic experiencing see anger as a protective boundary setting emotion. And it sees it as healthy and not about aggression, but about clarity, vitality, and the ability to say no when something violates our integrity. So how does somatic experiencing can help us with boundaries? First step, and this is what I said until now, is not mental. It's not about creating a list of what we like or we don't like. Maybe we can do that in a coaching session and it's going to be pretty helpful. But the most important part is that it starts in the body. Because if we don't know our felt sense or what a yes feels like and what a no feels like, it's going to be really hard to express it in the word. We need to feel it first in the body. And here is a little curiosity for you. So did you know that the very first nervous system tissues in organism were not brains, but were primitive sensory receptors? So that's to say that the body came long before the mind. There's a quote that I love from a really beautiful book that then I will write you down, that maybe it's going to be like a nice way to start. And it's called The Secret Language of the Body by Jennifer Mann. And she says, healings becomes possible when thinking and feeling start happening together, when they speak the same language. So somatic experiencing help us to do exactly that. We start to feel where our boundaries live inside the body. And we learn how to recognize when something is a no, not because we thought about it, but because we felt it. I want to close. I want to give like 30 minutes, around 30 minutes for like a Q&A part. So of questions and discussion. But I want to close with a self-inquiry practice that is taken from the book of Gabor Mate, which is called The Myth of Normal. It's another suggestion of book I suggest you to read about the connection between mind and body. So the first question is, in the important areas of my life, what am I not saying no to? The second question is, how does my inability to say no impact my life? Emotionally, physically, or relationally? And the third question is, what is the hidden story behind my inability to say no? Where did I learn that I have to say yes to be safe or loved? So this is a really useful self-inquiry question that you can do for yourself every day or like twice a week. And I would encourage you that you take your answers with you. And then in our next workshop, maybe we can deep dive into this and we can help you understand how to regulate the nervous system, how to understand when it's a yes and when it's a no, and give you some somatic tools also. Hari, maybe you can share also what next time we can do more.
Yeah, sure. But thanks for giving that introduction in such a comprehensive way. As I said, the intention for today is to introduce the connection, the interconnection between uh, the various aspects of boundary setting. Like Fede said, um, it is not just a behavioral thing. A lot of the boundaries start from our own meanings and stories that we hold of who am I, where am I in a system. That's why sometimes we don't know even the need for a boundary. So a lot of the ideas around boundary settings has a very core connection to our relationship with ourselves and consequently with the systems we are part of. So
Yeah.
so I think that part came out beautifully of how then it connects to our sense of self, how it connects to impact on well-being. Secondly, as we said at the start, the idea of this webinar is also to ensure that those of you who choose to come for the workshop, it is an optimal experience by making it as relevant as possible for your own context. So one of the invitation for this segment of the webinar is, having looked at these questions that Fede has shared, having listened to this last half an hour, what comes up in your mind as a boundary related challenge or observation? If you're not comfortable to share your own challenge, you can share an observation of what you see around you in your context or in your family or whatever. Or maybe it could be a lesson that you learned, which you would like to deep dive when we do the workshop. So, so the space is open for any observations, reflections, or sharing from your lives. And if those of you who are listening, I know many more people signed up for the webinar but have not joined on live. So if you're listening to this as a recording, I'll also be sharing a link where you can submit your response or question, and we'll take a look at it in the next 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
over to you guys who would like to start and share anything.
Yeah.
I had a thought regarding setting boundaries, because I think it's strict. It's also like it really depends on the relationship you have with yourself, right? So if you don't develop that self awareness and consciousness and trying to know yourself and what you feel and how situation make you feel, then it's also really hard to set the boundaries. So maybe I think even before the boundaries, we have to like really know ourselves, basically. And that's the first thing I thought about.
Yeah, exactly. The fact is, that's why it always starts in the body, right? Because if we recognize what is happening in our body, we connect more to ourselves, and then by consequence, we understand also what does it mean a no. The fact is that when I said like trauma disrupts our sense of self, is because our mind is conditioning ourselves, and so we give more space to our thoughts instead of what our body is saying. And we can see it because I think, I mean, I don't know between all of us, but I guess that if you're joining is because you're curious about it. You experience sometimes where you had like maybe a burnout, maybe you had anxiety, or maybe your body was talking and you didn't know what was happening. Maybe you had just a strong migraine, or maybe whatever else. That is because we are also disconnected to our intuition. Okay, so it's hard to read the body if we are not used to. Just more conditioned to stay in our thoughts. And the fact is that the mind is a making sense machine. So it tried to make sense. It tried to make sense. Okay, when the body has a much more clear answer. So just imagine if you connect with your body, how much easier it can be to feel the yes or to feel the no. I'm sure that all of you, when they said yes, but it was a no, they knew it inside of them that it was a no.
Yeah, I think again, sometimes we are so caught up in our own patterns that we don't even realize that we're feeling like something negative, instead of, because you keep on repeating, so you normalize it, or you think that the feeling it's
then
like
it just become worse and worse, and you really feel it on your body heavily after. Sometimes. Exactly. You can really relate. And you try to even, sometimes you say yes for this one thing that you really didn't want to do, and then to not think about you saying yes to this, you're gonna push your body even more to do it, and you're gonna feel even worse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe the next time, if we're gonna do like a more extended like workshop, we can deep dive into everyone's body sensation when they felt it was like the yes that they said actually was a no.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't even realize it's a no until you really get done. until you really feel it
Reach
over
the
your
bottom.
body.
Yeah.
And you even after healing from the down, only then you realize it was a no. You know, you don't knew when you say through your intuition,
Yeah.
and you didn't trust. That's
Yeah.
the problem. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that when we speak about self-awareness, sometimes we also confuse what we understand with what we actually feel.
Mm-hmm.
So when you said right now about that, oh, I knew it, but I understood it, or
After.
so that gap is the cognitive, intellectual understanding versus the embodied awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I heard you say was the body knows it, which is connected to self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
We are so primed to first understand something. But because evolutionarily also intellect came out later, there is a lag after which we actually make sense.
Yeah.
And we live in a world where the sense making is given more importance over felt experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a another beautiful quote, no? If your body says no, go with it. You can figure out the reason later.
Mm-hmm.
That is in line with this thought process. But how do we then know what is my awareness? I think that is where somatic practices come into play. And that is where I think what you shared earlier about how do you really look at what is my relationship with my own emotions when I feel something. For example, if I feel anger is bad, I miss the learning or the boundary that it is pointing me to.
Mm-hmm.
And in Indian classical dance traditions, we say anger is the child emotion of disgust. My boundary, so I feel disgusted about something. But if I am not tuned in, or if I have suppressed or learned to suppress disgust as a bad feeling, then I have an opportunity to know my boundary when I feel angry. My own sense of my liking is breached. So there are many ways in which we can actually look at how we feel as a mirror to understanding and working with our boundaries. And these are some of the things we will go deep dive into the workshop if we get a chance. But
I think it's gonna be also interesting. Tell me if you agree with that, Hari. That maybe in the extended workshop that we're gonna do on the 26th, if someone wants to be like a volunteer, we can do like a proper demonstration of a somatic experiencing session. So the person is gonna have like a basically a almost free like somatic experiencing session, but at least we understand what truly means being in tune with the body and embodying also a sense of boundaries, because I understand that it's not an easy one to understand just like by explaining it. So maybe if we see someone experiencing it for real, like it's going to be clear for everyone else.
yeah, sure. If anybody feels called to, we can always design it that way also. That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else? What did this entire discussion bring out for you?
Wanted to add my reflections on what Noemi, is that right? Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah.
And Hari shared. And what you also said, Hari, about how the cognition catches up later. One of the things I realized also, having gone through a particular education system which prizes sense making and articulation above awareness, and where I don't know why I feel this way, was considered to be a sign of not knowing yourself enough or being lost. To the point where I've reached now, where there is so much hidden wisdom in just this awareness. One of the things over the years that has helped, and this is something I've had to teach myself, is not to wait for the understanding, not to wait to know why my body is saying no to something, but just going ahead with it, because my mind is constantly saying, no, but I have to know why. Why? This doesn't make sense. I thought this was good for me. I thought I wanted this. Oh, but I was so excited about this. Now I don't, like, body's saying no. And much later, it starts making sense. But I think if I zoom out a little, for me, the larger journey has also been to devalue the pedestalization of the mind and somewhere increasingly put the body higher, much higher as the seat of wisdom. And especially feminine wisdom says body is where it all begins, and that's where you go back to. I've realized, like in hindsight, so many things come up about the past where my body was so clearly giving signals. But like you said, Hari, our ideas of what we think our relation is to the system. Do I have a right to say no? Do I have a right to feel what I'm feeling? Is it okay to oppose this well-established system and whatever apparent good intent and everything coming my way from the outside world? All of that has really messed with my boundary holding in life, you know. And the other thing also I wanted to share was that sometimes things happen so fast that you don't have a chance to really sense into the awareness. So one of the things that I'm almost pushing myself to do is deliberately slowing down decisions, impulses, reactions to say, okay, when something is happening outside, there is something rising from inside. Can I just watch everything in slow motion? Because I'm a very impulsive also. So I'm slowing down the reel, saying, okay, let me give my body a chance to talk to me before my mind jumps in. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes thing goes too fast, and then because it's so fast, at some points you realize you don't like what's going on, and then it's already too late to say no because you went in so fast into this thing. If it's a relationship, if it's a hobby, if it's a job, whatever. But sometimes you just go way too fast that you don't even let your mind and body adjust to it and see if you actually like it, and you're way too deep in to say no, and then you're kind of stuck in this deep hole where it's very hard to get out.
That's so true. And you know what, like the crazy thing, I think, so thank you so much, both of you, for sharing. Is that like you were like Akanksha, you were confirming that the mind is a making sense machine, basically, right? But we think sometimes that thoughts are faster than our body responds. And that's another misconception, if you think about it, because I'm sure that all the time your intuition comes up, or this gut feeling, or this, like, the body is first. We are just not able to recognize it. Like, we just give more space to the thoughts instead of the body. But I don't know, like when we meet someone sometimes that we don't like, for example, because it happens, we don't like everyone, we have this feeling of like, and this comes first, but then arrives something else that says, for example, oh, come on, but you cannot like dislike a person without knowing it, blah, 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 blah. And you make up a story, a really long story. And then the body, we forgot about it. But the body was already there. The body already knew about it, you know? So yeah, that's like the simple conclusion is that the thoughts, like the body is faster than the thoughts. We just need to learn to give more space to the body.
Just to build on that, Fede,
Mm-hmm.
Kanksha, if you recall your response after the when Fede asked this question, how did you feel listening to this? First, you mentioned about how you felt in your chest and throat. If you look at the second half, I am lost on the latter part. Why does it mean one won't be loved? Now, if you look at it from a process perspective, why question takes you to your intellect. So there was a dissociation.
Mm-hmm.
You touched something uncomfortable in the body. Before you could stay with it and perhaps bring in the wisdom of the body and tap into it, like it was so instantaneous, no? It disconnected and went into, oh, but why? So
This is a frequent realization, the realization of the mind-body disconnect I've been sitting with for a while to realize that they are not moving together and they're taking me in different directions and need to bridge.
And that's common. It happens to all of us. So the point is then how, even when we understand the need, if this is our body's way of escaping discomfort, because nobody wants to feel uncomfortable, right? That is even more the reason why theoretical understanding, while it helps to satisfy our intellect, what is the practice where I can anchor myself so that this can translate into my reality? where I know even when I stay with a discomfort, it's an opening of a door to a more healing space. That's where the embodied practices come into relevance.
Can I connect a little bit with this part about the sentence of Gabor Mate? So the interesting part about this sentence of Gabor is that I realize that there's a lot of confusion when I say this sentence. Like they're like, yeah, but what do you mean liked and loved? Okay. So the fact is that if we constantly say yes, of course people will like you. But the fact is that I wish for everyone, included me, that people will love me even if I say no. Because most of the time when we say constantly yes, people will like us. But in the moment we say no, most of these people will say, bye-bye, I don't like you anymore. So that was not love, you know? So that's the biggest part of this sentence. The difference between liking someone is that it's not authentic. It's because they need something from you. While if you say no and the person stay, that's authentic.
I was wondering, let's say once you realize something actually makes you uncomfortable, but you still have to do it. So Hari, you were saying like you have to like sit with it, you know? It's like, okay, I realize this is something that maybe I don't want to, but I have to go through it. So what's the best way to deal with that, you know? Because I can imagine it would be like the most like ideal world if you could always say no to the things that make you uncomfortable, but sometimes you just have to do it. So how do you sit with that?
Ari, you go for it or I go for it?
I can share an analogy because, see, I don't know in which context you're asking. Okay. So context matters. But if I were to just look at it as a general principle, if I choose to run a marathon, I also choose to be tired. For instance, what do we do when we choose not to act on a coping mechanism? Like I said, if I look at my own personal pattern, when I feel really fatigued, I know there is a one trauma response I have is I have the urge to binge eat some comfort food, which sometimes I might know, oh, it's not healthy or best for my body to eat after 8 or 9, but I might order something in. Yeah. Now, what is that? There is nothing more intellectually clear I need to be about. But I might still end up doing that. I might still wake up with a heavy tummy or something else. Now, logically, it doesn't make any sense. In that moment, I have chosen comfort food. In the larger scheme of things, I have chosen a discomfort. My view is that our sense of awareness of the price I pay and the payoff I subscribe shifts based on the window of resilience we have in a moment. Completely a different moment when I have done maybe my yoga practice or when I'm at a calmer state of mind, I might be able to override that temptation, have a fruit, go to sleep. But if I'm in an agitated state where my window of tolerance or resilience is less, I might give in to that, knowing that this is going to have a different impact later. But in that moment, that coping is what I'm choosing, knowingly, unknowingly, whatever. So I will leave it at that. So the more I can own up to why am I doing what I'm doing, I can make a different choice.
Like, that's a really interesting question, because that's where there's also a lot of confusion. There are boundaries and also compromises, and then there are walls. I feel the boundaries are the balanced part. And to reply, like, it's basically also what Ari said, but to reply with my own words, what I think is that, yeah, there are some things that we have to do, but if something is taking us too much energy and we are renouncing to ourself, to our authentic self, to our whatever you want to call it, then the boundaries should arrive. You know, so of course, if we talk about you want to go out with your boyfriend to have dinner in a place that he loves but you hate, okay, you can arrive to a compromise, okay? But if your boyfriend is obliging you to eat 500 grams of pasta and you eat it, that's gonna be, and you feel bad because you are also gluten-free. This is the time you have to put boundaries, you know what I mean? So I just make like a really strong example. But Hari, do you agree with me with what I said, or like, do you want to add something else?
No, the only addition would be, it is very subjective of what will qualify as a boundary, because only you will know whether there is a discomfort. Only you will know where it is too much or too less. And how do you know? So that inner compass depends on your level of sensitivity to yourself, and one barometer of that is your body. So unless we learn to connect with our body, learn to know how to unpack the signals it is giving me, that barometer will be off. So that's the practice.
In a sense, there's also like healthy discomfort, right? It's not always like bad for you. It can also be like
keeping like food diets to eat very healthy, but then you don't have fun pasta to eat whenever you want to, you know, like, but then you have a healthy diet.
I think maybe if I were to zoom out a bit about this the question, it also comes down to what is our cultural idea of comfort and discomfort. Like there is a world of difference between person who fasts and person who starves.
Yeah, it's completely different. Yeah, that's
like,
a good.
I can choose to enforce the boundary for myself. Like in India, yesterday, 2 days back, we started a very sacred month where fasting is part of this month. Okay. So people feel joyful and whatever, and who choose to do that. Now, if somebody else tells me you don't eat today, or you eat only water or fruit, it will feel perhaps very different. Or if I carry a transgenerational trauma, like in India, for example, a lot of obesity is linked to transgenerational trauma of famines during colonial times. Now, depending on your cultural context, it can create a certain meaning of what it means not to have food. So that boundary can be very different for a person's upbringing and personal life experience. So I think that's just a meta level idea of, so do I choose my discomfort? Then boundary might look different. But or if my idea of life is life should always be comfortable, any discomfort will feel like a threat, then I will have a different response. So I think the more I can work with the stories I hold about life, about what it means to live a good life, it will change.
Thank you.
More of a thought than a question. So what you said made sense, because in an ideal world, we want a situation where we are free to say no, and there is no discord in a relationship with the next person. But that is the ideal world, and in maybe I might sound negative in this context, but what we mostly get to experience is that the society, for what it is worth, always expects a yes. Okay, that's the way it works, because especially when you look at professional situations, mostly if you say no, you will slowly get sidelined. You have this thing that you'll get sidelined. And when it comes to personal relationships, it's a little more complicated. We understand that, but generally, especially with friends, especially with not too close friends. So I'm not talking about childhood friends, but friends that you gathered along your journey. It's not going to be easy to say no all the time, because many a times it again depends on the relative liking and disliking between the two parties, because what is liking and disliking for you need not synchronize with the liking and disliking for the next person. So so that is where the whole thing becomes a little more complex, because what I have experienced in my life personally is I have this other extreme where I'm very clear about what I want to say. I seldom say no when I have to say yes, and seldom say yes when I have to say no. But consciously I do say it, because like what you said, it's a compromise, because you consciously say yes even though you want to say no, because your body has already said. You are absolutely right, we have this problem of not differentiating what the body says versus what the mind says. That's absolutely, I totally am with you there. But again, many a times intuitively you know that your body is saying no immediately, and your body, of course, in that case when you say yes, you're taking that bit to yourself, saying yes, I know this. So I was saying, so I might want to say no, but I still choose to say yes, because I know what this long term impact is going to be in terms of saying no. So therefore I say yes, and of course I pay the price for saying yes. But
But
hopefully
yeah,
that
I want to ask you a question.
Sure, please.
What is the impact that you're talking about?
So let's say I'm going to say no for a question that came to me. But I know that if I say no, the immediate thing that might happen is, let's say in a team discussion, right? Something that is there where I know the impact. I know that if I say no, that would be the appropriate thing. But I might neutrally stay. I'll be assertive and be neutral about it. I'll either say no or yes. I'll be diplomatic about it. That's one option. Or I could say yes. Both these options exist. So in either case, I am actually deviating from my own necessity to say no. And why I'm doing that is because I have a larger objective. This is typically what happens in a discussion when you have, when you're there in a more of a professional discussion, because there the decisions are long term and there is an impact. So if you said no, then you'll probably lose the opportunity down the line. So you make a compromise and you try to assess the damage that you're going to do by saying yes. But of course, sorry, I'll just quickly complete. So if
No, it's really interesting. Like I'm just wondering, I don't know like what exactly situation you're talking about or which relationship you're talking about, but I'm also wondering another thing, like what is gonna happen if you say no? Like what is your scenario if you say no?
Okay, so let's say this is typically what happens in a service industry. I come from a service industry where I've worked for donkey years in that. So what typically happens is when you're in a discussion with the clients, okay, so you know for sure that you have to say no. But now you cannot displease the client. It's not of a personal thing, it's more of a professional thing. So in that situation, for whatever reasons, you will have to swallow hard and either remain quiet or be neutral and just go with the flow till it reaches a point where you are able to communicate your no in a very very subtle manner. But it does eat into your energy, because down the line, this has happened with me once. I think 2.5 years. I 2.5 years is a very long time in a human career, isn't it? But I put up with the client only for one reason. It's because that was the only way I could manage that, and of course, it had a toll on my emotional health for sure, because it did take away my mental peace. But then I had to stay with that for a while. So that is the point I was saying. In the long term, I was able to stay for 2.5 years only because I was able to say yes in spite of me wanting to say no, where I consciously wanted to say no. But then if I had said no, even if I had been assertive, I knew that that relationship would have been a little tough to navigate, because it's a professional relationship. See, if it's just me and if it impacts only me, then I have the control to say no. But if it's in the wider organization, the persistence of that relationship is more important for the organization than for yourself. So it serves a bigger purpose. Did I make sense now?
Yeah, it makes sense. Absolutely. And I just want to share so that the impact of your body and your mental peace looks like it was really impacting, let's say, right?
Extreme.
It was extreme. So, like, I'm just wondering, so, like, in a your future self, okay, if it goes back to this situation where you were basically thinking more about the others, right? And this gives you like a lot of like, I mean, it looks like you're a person that is able to give a lot of love, let's say, even if it was a professional thing, but basically you put yourself second and then you put the others first, right? But if your future self could go back and do something different, what is gonna do?
That's a very tough question to answer, because the reason is, see, if I put myself first and I took that chance, and if it did result in a mismanaged relationship or whatever reasons, because then it becomes, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because if you said no and then you lose, you see again, I don't mind about what happens to me in my career, all that is secondary. But then the relationship between the two organizations, because you hold a key position, it can get spoiled. It depends on what position you hold. If you are not in a very key position where it doesn't matter, it's okay. But if it's a very key position, then you hold the responsibility of sustaining the relationship. And if you don't do that, then there is a moral obligation there, isn't it?
I will just step in if you can, Hriday. So,
Sure.
Yep.
so one, there is a limit of how to unpack this scenario because it is hypothetical and the context is missing. But from a principle standpoint, what I'm hearing you say is it was not about me. I was part of a system. The impact would have been adverse on the system. Hence, I chose to go with a yes when my body said no. I think that's the crux of what you shared, right?
Absolutely.
So, my invitation is to look at what is the learning here from a boundary setting perspective. The learning I see for myself when you are sharing the story is at an organizational business level, there is a very beautiful saying I have learned from one of my mentors that you choose your destiny when you choose your clients. So you mentioned a couple of times that there's this one client to whom I had to do this. So what did you do? In doing what you did, what you actually chose was to pay a certain price for your well-being. Now, I work with many organizations, leadership teams where this kind of misalignment is very common, especially in services industry. I also had a background in that. Now, what is very glaring is organizations at a culture level. This is a cultural issue, a personal issue. At a culture level, they seems to downplay the price they pay for the well-being of the staff, of the leadership team, of the company itself. Like, I can't say no to a client is a story. Now, if that is the story the organization buys into, that is the outcome and the choices it would lead to. Because then saying no to a client is out of question. But if an organization puts at its center the well-being and the alignment it has with its own whatever values and things, and if in that value system valuing of well-being is part of the core philosophy, it will filter out clients based on that. It's not about personally somebody feels that way or not. So I feel I agree with you. It's a larger organizational thing, and this is something that we work at an org level when people come and but for that also one needs to at the organizational level, the leaders of the organization should be aware that oh, there is a misalignment. Just like how in this session we were talking about the micro level misalignment. When I feel my body said no, but I'm tempted to compulsively say yes, what you're describing is a macro level thing. At a systemic level, when an organization decides to do that over a period of time, it has a cultural impact on the whole well-being of the staff. And in the story, you seems to be part of that staff or
Yeah, if I can add, like, I mean, as Ari, you were saying, like, there are so many nuances. Like, we need to know all the context of this situation, because it's pretty, like, I understand it was really hard for you. So, I mean, what we are trying to say is that if we are able to say no, no matter what is the situation right now, okay, the fact is that we are not going to pay the cost with our health. And I understand there are some situations that we cannot escape. But at the same time, that's why we need more context, because I don't know if we truly cannot escape this situation. So, but I don't think we have enough time today to deep dive into this. Maybe one somatic experiencing practice could help you to understand better, like, what is happening in your body when these things happen.
just one thing there, because sometimes, see, when I'm invested in a story that I can't say no in this scenario, one trick I use, because it's a story, one trick I personally use is I just check with them, what am I saying yes to? What would I like to say yes to? Then sometimes, because we have a yes towards yes, we might choose a different yes than the current yes. So that's just again hypothetical, but yeah, it's a trick of the mind in a way.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Hari. It's a very interesting point.
Okay, I think we're at 10 minutes over time, but we started 5 minutes late, so it's okay. So
It's exactly.
any other pressing questions, clarifications anybody has? Otherwise, we can take a minute to kind of close the space.
I had one, but I'll probably shoot this mail because I don't think we have the time to discuss. So probably I'll shoot a mail on that rather than take away your time.
Sure. So my suggestion is this: after this webinar, I will email the recording and a form that if something else pops up as a critical, important thing that you would like to explore in the longer workshop session, just submit the form so that as we prepare towards that in the next 2 weeks, we can put maybe specific practices, activities that can help deep dive into those things. Yeah. So if you can take a minute, quickly share where are we at the end of today's session? How do you feel?
Glad we joined. It was
Yeah.
it was
Very much.
enlightening.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, it was definitely something that was there's so much insight into things that were I thought I knew about it, but then there are some nuances that I didn't know that was important. So the most important thing, as far as the takeaway for me in this session is, okay, I always knew that I had to say no, and I was in tune with my head, and I was able to do it where I had the opportunity on my personal space. I could do that, but the difference is, even now I'm struggling to understand. So how did I couldn't understand the reaction of the body versus the mind, and that aspect of the body's reaction versus mind, the differentiation is the takeaway from me, because that is something to, so at least now I know I need to do a differentiation, because earlier it was more murky, but now it's a little more clear that you need to understand that there's a difference between a reaction between the body and the mind. So that
Wow,
was an insight.
amazing. You had a great insight today. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you will, like, my suggestion is to sit with it today, like, just let it unfold a little bit, and you see, maybe tomorrow you will see the dream you will have tonight, and then maybe in the next session, if you're gonna join, we can deep dive a bit more in a profound way.
Sure, we could. Right. Thank you.
I think on that note, I feel very connected and energized by this session. If you choose to join the workshop on 26th of July, last week of this month, you can still do it at the same link where you register for this. We are offering these webinars and workshops in the spirit of building community of practitioners and people who become more aware and are able to gain better sense of how they can take care of their own well-being. So in the spirit of keeping it accessible, we have created the workshops with the spirit of gift economy. So there is a payment, but there is no compulsion that you need to pay this, that, or the other amount. So just sense into your body. Let even the energy exchange and payment be a extension of your body awareness. So what you feel right in your body, you are free to offer that. No judgments about it. But we do welcome you to the session if you feel whatever you experience today is valuable and it is relevant for you to deep dive into it in your own life. Are there any closing comments?
I was just like, I love the energy and the exchange. I want to say that in our next session that we're going to do, the 26th, it will be even more interactive. I love that it becomes like not just me or you talking, but we create a sort of flow on the communication between all of us. Even the co-regulation moment is going to be more interactive between ourselves. We are going to do some exercises together. Maybe we are going to use a bit of creativity also, and we're going to draw. So, I mean, I'm just saying that, yeah, it would get even more exciting. And already now I'm excited because it was really nice. And yeah, I'm just glad everyone was able to participate. And I'm also thankful that you, Ari, were able to create such a nice, safe space, Sōma Maṇdala community.
And thank you, Fede, for accepting the invite to do this month with me. And I hope to see all or some of you at the workshop later this month.
Yeah, Fede and Hari, I think this is a great initiative because the world needs something very, this is a very, very relevant thing today because I think a lot of professionals are facing fatigue, especially mental fatigue. I come from an IT services background. Life now has been absolutely stressful in any industry. IT is just one part, but a lot of industries are even more stressful than this. So when you do things like this, hopefully that is a big thing. We don't know. It might be the best thing that can happen to a person. So it's absolutely, we are really grateful that you're doing something as wonderful as this. It's a great initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you can also spread the word. There is still time for people to catch up on the recording and maybe decide to join. So if you loved it, do share with more people you feel might benefit.
We'll do
Exactly.
that. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.